Hey everyone, Fran here. I just finished an interview with author Christine Fonseca. She just came out with her brand new book called Nevertheless Create, and it's a journey really into the soul. She's an author, an educational psychologist, she's a mentor, a teacher, a coach, artist. She does it all. She too has gone through the dark night of the soul. And in this book, she teaches us how to go in and out and come back out again, and to recognize that we're all human and that we're all able to ebb and flow as we need to. I love this interview, and I think you will too. I hope you stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hopenning. This is the place where hope is happening. And I am so pleased and honored to have my special guest here today, Christine Fonseca. Thank you so much for joining me, Christine.
Truly a pleasure. I am so excited to be here today.
I was just telling you before the show started that I just finished your book last night. And I'm not a speed reader, I'm a
Mhm.
teacher, but it took me so long because I just kept on going back and highlighting stuff and cutting and pasting. There's a multitude of quotes in there. Today I'm going to throw a few quotes out to our special viewers.
Love that.
Yeah. So Christine's coming to us from California
I
today.
am. I
Yeah.
am Southern
Beautiful.
California.
Beautiful. So, Christine, I'm not sure where you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I was actually born in Oregon, but we left Oregon when I was under a year old. So of course I don't remember anything. And really all I remember is growing up in California. So
Okay.
we were in California, and then as an adult, I've lived in many states across the United States, but basically the West Coast. That's where I'm most comfortable. I did spend some time on the East Coast, so
So, if I were to ask your closest high school friend what you were like in high school, what would they say?
awkward, probably weird. It all depends on who you ask, right? I was a child of the early 80s growing up in high school, and I was a stereotypical Valley girl for sure. Um, Overly preppy, Valley girl, spoke like a Valley girl at times.
Do you have the
Like
high
I
hair?
did. I had
Oh my
high
God.
hair.
Oh,
I wore, yeah. If you watch a good 80s throwback show, that was me in high school. It's pretty accurate.
so you were awkward and weird. You were an awkward, weird valley girl,
I
um,
was.
who really, I mean, from reading your book,
Hmm.
nevertheless create. You really loved your mom. There was some
Oh yeah.
kind of an
I
attachment there.
Oh yeah. My mom is the wisest person I know to date, even though she's passed quite a while ago. It was just her and I until I was about 12 or 13. So ninth grade is when she remarried, and it was hard for me to accept him. I had a very wise grandmother who basically told me to get over myself and that my mother had a right to be happy, and she was very wise also, and she was true, and he was wonderful, wonderful man, so it all worked out just fine. But in high school, high school was really quite hard for me, actually. So me, this weird creative human, decided that she really wanted to fit in and not be so weird and whatnot, and that often meant suppressing lots of parts of myself. So suppressing the part of myself that's really bright and straight A's and all of that, and then also suppressing the part of me that was pretty weird. And that I could mask all of that, and did actually was very successful at that. But it was really it I had to pay a price for that. It was really difficult for me to maintain that mask, and it took kind of refinding myself in high school, and then years later I get these glimpses of who I was, like who I was really was at my core. And it took many, many years for me to kind of find her back and kind of become her again. So
And really a roller coaster ride,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
For
So
sure.
you talk about it in your book, about the struggles
Mhm.
of being an artist, author, and
Yep.
you interchange the two. The
100%.
yeah. I'm reading your book, Nevertheless Create. I'm thinking, no wonder, right? I just keep on
Yep.
going, no wonder.
Yeah.
And I know this stuff, right? I know this stuff.
Yep.
I've taught elementary school children for 34 years. I teach university pre-teachers now, which is lovely.
Very
So,
cool.
right? And so I know this stuff, and yet it gets buried down so deep that
Yeah.
when you see it again in writing, you go, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So you've got your book. It just came out this year.
Yeah, it just came out, in October, actually. September, I take that back. It came out in September. See, it all is a blur.
So you've got three parts of your book. You've
Yep.
got, it talks about the root,
Yep.
the burn, and the
Yep.
breathe. But I'm going to start out with a quote because I love this quote. And it starts like right in the very beginning. It says, the most powerful stories are the ones that breathe.
100%.
So tell me why you put that quote at the beginning.
Sure. So I'm a somatic writer. We'll start with that. And so that really just means I write through the body. So
Mm,
I believe very passionately that our bodies hold a wisdom within its membrane
mm,
that is exists before language. And as a result of it existing before language, it's also the most true. It's the most authentic for us and whatever it is we're trying to convey. And when we can go first into the body and really feel what it is we're trying to say, and then bring it up through the mind so that we can attach word to it and meaning to it before we release it into the world, that's a very different experience than what we typically do as authors, which is come first through the mind, then into the body, and then back into the mind and out. And I feel like when we go this way, there is a filtering that happens, and sometimes our mind can lie to us a little bit, or we wind up having a distance, so it's almost like we're watching a movie instead of being the movie, whereas when we go through the body, we're being the movie. Mhm.
I use a practice in hypnotherapy. I'm also a
Mhm.
hypnotherapist where we do a lot of this type of work
Yeah,
where we find the feelings within the body. So
100%.
the root in the first part of your book is all about the body, and you talk
Mhm.
about Bessel van der Kolk. So maybe you can touch a little bit on his work and what
Sure.
he found out.
Sure. So he's a researcher, and he researched the impact of trauma on people. And so I'm a trained psychologist, and a book that predates this book is called Healing the Heart, which I wrote, which is a book about trauma. And it's a book about the way in which our bodies hold on to traumatic experiences. And Bessel's work, Vonderkolk's work, really goes in depth on that. So it's really talking about our nervous system having memory, storing echoes of experiences and things that we haven't been able to process, things that we did not get to resolve. We didn't do the full loop of resolution, lives as echoes in our body. And I believe that this is true, not only with what we have personally experienced and things we didn't get to process, but then we also have this whole aspect of a collective unconscious. And so, to what extent does all human beings experience and hold in their body units the experiences of a lifetime of trauma that didn't get processed?
And does that include generational trauma?
100%.
Yes, I believe that
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah,
right?
he actually did he and the works of others have done a lot of work around generational trauma and exactly how these loops perpetuate because they're perpetuating in the DNA. and how
Mhm.
that impacts things down the road. So the easiest kind of traumatic, but not the way we tend to think about trauma example, people who experienced a famine and then a generation or two later, their bodies are biologically different and they couldn't lose weight if their whole life depended on it. Like, their bodies are just kind of primed to hold on to any weight for fear of that famine, and the linkage there of kind of the cause and effect of a generation of people living through deathly famine, and kind of how that transmuted through the DNA and how it changed the DNA over time.
I think it's just fascinating. So, in your book, you talk about emotional whiplash,
Take it.
right? So, what do you put that into these
Sure,
terms?
sure. So I talk a lot about emotional intensity, and I talk a lot about going back and forth in one's emotions so fast it might make your head spin, which is kind of that emotional whiplash. But emotional intensity is um, painting the world in bold colors while everybody else is painting in pastels. It's living life so intensely that literally the information you're getting into through your five senses is different than somebody who might be a little bit more neurotypical and not have the same kind of intense experiences. So we see this in different collections of peoples, and artists tend to be one of the groups that we see this in, where the information they're taking in through the eyes is bigger, it's more, it lights up the brain more. The information you get in through your ears, same thing. The information you receive through touch or through your sense of scent. And so when we live that way, when we live out loud like that, it can become very overwhelming to the system. And within the culture that most of us currently live in, that culture tells us that that's a bad thing. It's an overwhelming thing. We tend to assign, we're broken in some way or unbalanced in some way. And part of what we talk about in the book is maybe that's not actually the whole answer. Maybe this is not a problem at all. Maybe it's just the truth of who we are, and we haven't found the right collection of skills to kind of deal with that in such a way that it becomes a strength instead of something that's difficult for us.
So, was it your work with students as an educational psychologist that really hit all of this
Yeah.
home to you? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of was the start. So the very first book I actually ever wrote was Emotional Intensity in Gifted Students. And it was a piece about, or a book about, for parents originally, but also for educators, to understand the gifted student, or the student who has high potential, who would have a high cognition, and kind of what's the flip side of that high cognition, which is emotional intensity. So not only am I intense in my thinking, I'm intense in my feeling as well. The exploration of that really started exposing for me not only my own realities as both a gifted human being and a highly creative human being, and what all of that means, but just this story after story after story of creative human beings and what their experiences are in the world. And there's so many parallels to the experiences of many of our gifted human beings. And so that then led to that exploration of, okay, well, what does all of this mean? What does this mean for me as a creator? What does this mean for creators in general, or at least some facet of creators in general? All of that journey, both with students and with families over the past 30 plus years, eventually led to my own discovery of deeper somatic work and exactly what all of that is, going deeper into all of the kind of biggies around polyvagal theory and somatic experiencing and some of all of these things. And in my own exploration and becoming a certified somatic practitioner and all of this stuff started relating to one another. And I started seeing patterns in my own work as an author, because I've been an author since 2008. And really, I've been a writer my entire life. It really brought home that I was doing a lot of this somatic writing all of my life. I just did not have a term for it. I didn't understand what it was that I was doing. And it wasn't until I got language for it and got healthy enough in my own understanding and my own functioning and my own capacity that I was able to then kind of turn that beautiful, observational skill and examination skill that I have as both an artist and a psychologist inward, and really say, okay, let's make some sense out of stuff in your own life. And then nevertheless, create really reflects some of that self-exploration.
You did go through a dark night of the soul. Like
Mhm.
that's my term. I don't believe you used that term in the book,
No, but it's accurate.
right? What happened at that point?
So the one that I talk about a lot in the book is the death of my mom. So, most people can relate to the death of a parent as being a really significant thing. And for me, my mom, she raised me as a single parent. She was the wisest person I know, like I said earlier. And so when she died, I felt like my creative spark died with her. And I was pretty convinced that I wasn't going to write ever again. I felt stuck. I felt jealous of my mom's friends who were like, oh, she visited me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, she didn't visit me. I'm her daughter. What the heck? Like so there was anger. I went through the whole nine. It was quite the journey. I went through all of it. And I fortunately turned to my author friends, and I had quite a few at that time. We were all writing novels and whatnot. And they said, no, you didn't lose anything. You're just having a hard time finding it. And I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. I just think I lost it. And they encouraged me to write, gave me some really good writing exercises where I just explored the base emotions through writing. It was really probably the first time I did an actual practice that was really, really somatically based. And at the time, I was working on a pretty dark novel about a paranoid schizophrenic. And so, using those characters, which gave me the distance that I needed, I was able to really explore love, rage, grief, sadness, like all of these things through these main characters of this book. And that exploration healed me in the moment, but it didn't fully heal me, right? It just kind of got me through the moment, and it made me very functional, but I was in functional freeze for another decade or so. And at that time, I was very busy with work. I was very busy with other things. My nonfiction work was very successful. So it was very easy to kind of look at my outside life and say, I'm not blocked. I'm not blocked at all. Look, I'm producing all of these things. All of these things are winning awards. They're winning critical acclaim. Like it's all must be fine, until it just wasn't. And my health is really what kind of clued me into how not okay I was. And I had some very significant health scares. I had gained quite a bit of weight. A lot had happened. My husband got very ill. I had to deal with some stuff with him. And so there was just this roller coaster of life happening that many of us experience. And I wasn't paying attention to the toll all of that was taking. Fast forward to kind of healing from the physical toll, because that became such an obvious touch point that I was not okay. And through all of that, I was able to heal fully and really kind of fully come back to myself, and then slowly start producing writing together. During that time, though, I wasn't non-creative. I just kind of walked away from writing for a bit. But I was doing fiber art, which is something I loved as a child. I was slowly finding other avenues of creativity, because that creative spark, much as I didn't realize that in the moment, actually didn't go anywhere. It was actually right with me all along. She's never, ever gone away. It's been my capacity to see her and feel her and know that she's there and trust in that part of me, that took a while to find my way back.
So you had been writing this
Mhm.
normal,
Well, he was a paranoid schizophrenic in the main character was a paranoid schizophrenic. Yeah.
so you finished that piece of
I did
work.
finish it. I did release it. It's actually one of the best things I've ever written, by far. Like it was raw. It was a nod to Edgar Allan Poe and to Mary Shelley, some of my favorites in that genre. And others who read it, like, gave me that feedback that they felt that as well. And so I knew that I had hit that right, but I just, with fiction in general, It's just something I walked away from in 2020 when we were all kind of going
Yeah.
through the whatevers of 2020. Um, Part of my whatevers was pulling all of my fiction off the shelves as I was trying to really figure out and heal and figure out who the heck I was as an author.
Right. And it
Hmm.
was the fiber art. It was the fiber art and getting your hands moving
Yep.
that allowed that spark
It
to
all came
to
back.
go,
Yeah.
right? To get
It really
released
did
and
because 2020 is also when I picked up my fiber art again. It started with a simple request from my adult children. Some people made, sourdough
right.
and whatever during their COVID years. They sang songs and we all had our Zoom parties, right? Like this is how we all got through it as fabulous as human beings are at figuring out how to survive and how to find hope in even really dark times. My children approached me during that time, and one of them was living, actually, at that time, both of them were living under my roof, and said, "Hey, mom, we'd like to start an Etsy shop and we'd like to make art and we'd like to like do these things." And I'm like, "That sounds cool. I'll help you with that." And then as part of that, they said, "Hey, mom, do you think you could make like this?" And they showed me like a macrame belt. And I'm like, "Dude, I used to make that stuff in the 70s. Yes, I can make that." And so one thing led to another, and I was making all different kinds of plant hangers, and then I was figuring out how to make coasters, and then I was just doing the thing and just getting ever more creative. And fast forward a few more years, my daughter, oldest daughter, who is a professional artist, was feeling really stagnant in her job, and so she formed an art collective which enabled her to experiment with art again and not have it be the job, right? Because sometimes when art becomes the job, we kind of lose that creative thing that drew us to it in the first place. And so, as part of this creative, it was her, a friend from art school, and then they had asked me. And the idea is to experiment and to play with different genres or different modalities of art. And so I am still part of that art collective. I vacillate between writing and fiber art for it, but it still is the venue in my fiber art world where I get to play with technique and I get to play with trying to figure out how to do, sculptural pieces with yarn. Or the piece that I will be working on shortly here is a piece that actually has not a single knot in it, and yet macrame is all about knotting yarn. And so, what
Wow.
can I do to throw things around and mash up technique in this really free way? And because I'm doing it, it's so completely non-performative, right? Like no one's ever gonna, I'm not selling them. I'm not doing any of that. Eventually I might sell them because I'm running out of wall space for some of this stuff. So eventually they might get sold, but really that's not the point of it, right? It's we're given a prompt word, usually one or two words or a phrase, and then you just go create something with it. Um, and so yeah, it's just this free form expression that enabled the nonfiction work to come back actually really, really quickly. I was in the middle of doing a somatic, my work for my somatic certification. I was doing some practice sessions with one of my sisters in that same program with one of my colleagues, and we rediscovered the book that was the basis of Nevertheless Create sitting on a hard drive in my computer, and decided to bring it back to life. That's literally what happened. That's how it came back. It was originally written, published for about a month, if that, probably more like a week, before I pulled it off because I knew something wasn't right with it, but I didn't know what wasn't right. And then it lived on my computer since 2012, 2013. It just hung out while I was going through whatever I was going through, and it wasn't the right
Wow.
time. And then in a phone call with her, she said something that reminded me of the book. And I'm like, I think I wrote something like that. And so I looked while she was on with me, I looked on my hard drive for it, and lo and behold, there's the file. I pulled the file up. I read random pages to her from it. We said, wow, this is actually really good, but it's incomplete. It needs to be completely redone. And so I revamped the entire thing. So it's probably only about 30% of the original, but it was the basis of it. And most recently, actually, since I think the first time you and I ever spoke, I've now have fictional characters who have sprung back to life in my head from the books that I took off the shelves, and have absolutely problem solved in this creative brain of mine exactly how to modernize those stories, because those stories were written in like 2010, 2013, 2014 in a world that was very different. And although the themes resonate, the way in which you express those themes would feel very dated in today's world. And so I don't know, who knows, they're coming back. I don't
Oh,
know how they're going to come back, but they're coming back.
that's exciting.
It is. My characters
That's
will not shut up, so they're
okay.
gonna
What
have to come
what's the
back.
name of that book?
So that series is the Requiem series,
Ah,
and it was originally an angels and demons story. So kind of Romeo and Juliet, but with angels and demons. And it was written for a young adult market, and it's being reconceptualized for an adult market. And it's it's edgier and grittier and more modern, and more firmly locked in self energy than the other book was. And honestly, I think I needed to heal in a certain way before I could even think about writing that book. So there you go. Timing is everything.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So the goal is that all three books of that original series will come back out, reimagined completely in 2026.
It's going to be great.
Thank
Especially,
you.
I think about those young teenagers probably or
Yeah.
young adults that read those. And when they
Yep.
find out that you're
Oh
coming
yeah.
out with more, and
Oh
now they're
yeah.
in their late 20s and
They'll
30s
get
or
to
early 30s.
read it
Oh,
from a new lens, right? Like from a new
exactly.
take on it. Yeah.
Exactly. It'd be exciting for
Yeah.
them. So somewhere in here, like fear is a huge one. Like I'm
Yeah.
wondering when you stopped writing, um, like it took you 10 years to get going again on the writing.
Mhm.
Do you think it was
Oh,
fear-based?
absolutely.
So
Well,
we
I'll
talk,
tell you, I guarantee it was fear-based because, when you work as a somatic practitioner, if you're worth your salt at all, you always you take care of self first, right? When your parts are showing up, you're fully recognizing what the parts are and you're doing your own little self-resourcing, right? Otherwise, you're not, that's kind of the gig. Like if I can't hold myself up as a somatic practitioner if I'm not doing the work. So sure enough, these characters are screaming in my head. They're wanting to write sooner than I was planning on writing them back into the narrative. And you bet, huge amounts of fear also came up. Both fear of being wildly as successful as I know it can be, and fear of, but what if it's not? Like both things came up simultaneously. And I would say previously, there were fear stories and worthiness stories, and maybe I don't have anything actually to say kinds of stories that came up, and all of those are just those pieces of self that we kind of ignored for whatever reasons that we ignored them. It wasn't safe to emote. It wasn't safe to feel those feelings. Whatever those things were that occurred then, those stories live on. Even when we've healed, even when we've done all the work, they still live on as echoes. And sometimes we're just not good at discerning issues that still need to be processed through versus issues that are solved, but they still come up because it's habit.
so what do you do if the fear comes up
You're
and you're
right
go,
anyways.
but how?
So there's a couple of things, right? First, I absolutely give myself permission to not write. If my head's not there, if life is lifing hard, I have a very I'll take right now, right? Like I have a very busy and complex life. I have a new brand I've launched. I still have that Etsy brand with my children, and we're growing that as well. I'm a full-time employee in a school district still. And then I'm a thriving artist as well. And so it's busy. And not to mention, I have an amazing partner and we have an amazing life. So all of it just means I'm just busy. But I believe in what Einstein said, that you always have time to do the things that are really important to you. And so I know that creating is really important to me. So I have choices I have to make sometimes. And sometimes that means I'm going to sit in the muck and just experience the muck. with no expectation and no push, and just explore the muck. And not necessarily with the intent of it being anything other than me being incredibly curious about what that muck is about. And sometimes that means I'm going to write. Sometimes it might mean I'm going to do some macrame instead. Sometimes it might mean that I'm going to like journal in my head. I might not be writing it down, but I'm going to journal in my head while I'm macrameing because I'm also trying to manage kind of my somatic response to whatever's coming up in my head. So I might do those things together. But this is really around the practice of showing up. If we're gonna be artists, because that's who we are at our core, then we're gonna have days that are hard. We're gonna have days when the world is screaming too loud and it's too much and our intensities are running amok. And my job as a human being on the planet is to just fully accept myself in all of those moments. And so I do. Might mean that I'll be in the middle of having a conversation and I'll start crying because something bubbled up. I'm just unapologetic about that. If someone doesn't know me very well, so they don't know, and they're like, what's happening? I'm going to let them know. I emote really freely. Don't worry about it. It's all good. We're all good. I just emote freely. This will pass.
So you have little exercises in the book where you
I do.
actually hold your hand over your
Yep.
heart.
You can hold
There's,
and one on your belly sometimes
oh,
too, so that
oh
you can
yeah.
really ground yourself, right? So heart, belly, feet on the ground, deep breath right into the body. Yeah. There's lots and lots of things you can do. And I do these regularly. If you
It,
were ever to follow me on Instagram, you're going to see about 400 pictures of this because that's, I'm probably
it,
resourcing in the moment.
you turn your eyes up too,
I
right?
do. I look up when I do it often.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I do that in my practice as well
Yeah.
for my clients. So you've got one of your practices where you put your hand on your heart and then you actually say how you're feeling and
Yep.
what you feel like doing.
Yeah.
So if I were, wanting to check my phone instead of just doing my whatever it was, I would just say,
I really want to check my phone right now because it's really hard sticking with this scene. It's really hard. I am really uncomfortable. And here's what happens. The minute you acknowledge all of that, it's not so loud anymore. That need to get away is a piece of you that's not being acknowledged. That's what that is. And so by you just saying, taking a deep breath, getting real grounded and saying, I really want to walk away. And then another part of me will say, well, why do you want to walk away, Christine? Because this is really hard. Why do you think this is hard? Because there's all these big emotions, and I feel like I'm going to drown in all of these emotions right now. Have you ever had an experience where you drowned it in your emotions? Like, really? You couldn't ever get out of it? Well, no. But was it scary? Yeah, really, really scary. And did you survive that fear? Yep, totally survived that fear. So do you think you could sit with it a little longer right now? Yeah. Or, nope, not today. Okay, then guess what? We're going to get up and we're going to walk away. Okay. This is
so
literally what I'll do.
So basically, what you're doing is you're talking to the child inside of you, right?
That part of me
Like,
that's exiled in that
right?
moment.
Right. So it would be like the
Yeah,
good parent or the good teacher
yeah,
talking to the child who didn't want
yeah,
to pick up their pencil and do
yeah,
their work or get their homework done or whatever.
yeah.
It's teaching the small child how to work through their own.
It's bringing that exiled piece of ourselves
Mhm.
back into the wholeness of who we are. And you can only do that by acknowledging their existence.
Right. Because it's it's like a puzzle. You
Mhm.
don't have a complete puzzle, even if there's just one piece that's missing,
Well, and the truth of the matter is, we will spend our whole lifetime trying to find all the little pieces of self.
right?
You still always, always, ever present, no matter how fractured things may feel, There is a piece of self that is your full, unified, full self energy, who is also always present. And so it's a matter of utilizing that part of you to help reconcile all of the other parts of you and realize how glorious all of it is, flaws and all. It's what makes us glorious.
Yeah, so okay. Just get myself grounded again.
There you go.
Yeah, notice and name when you want to walk or run away.
Yep.
Notice and name it.
Notice and name it.
Brilliant.
And then if you still need to run away, that's okay. The point isn't stop yourself from doing whatever you're trying to do. The point is notice it and name it and then decide.
Yes.
So that you're deciding from a place that's grounded and resourced, not a place that is dissociating from whatever it is.
Because it could be that that small child inside of us really does want to do
Mhm.
this,
Yeah,
right? That they just,
yeah,
they can't wait, but they're so afraid
yep,
from rejection or somebody
yep.
said something
A
to them
million and
once,
one things.
right?
And I mean, let's
Million.
be real. Being an artist, finishing a piece of art, letting somebody else see our art, there's not much more vulnerable on the planet. I mean, let's be real. People get to see a bit of our soul and they're going to
Mhm.
do whatever they want with that. That's hard. There's nothing easy about that. It takes an incredible amount of bravery to do that. And so we also have to celebrate that if we're feeling a little hesitant to be brave, that's okay. This is scary. It's good. Like, I get it. I totally get it. And I think sometimes in some of our cultures, we think that we aren't supposed to feel that way, that there's something wrong if we feel that way, that that's alerting us to a problem. No, I wouldn't say so. I would say, is it realistic to think that somebody's going to be afraid about being completely naked in front of the world? Yes, that is completely realistic that somebody would feel afraid to do that. Then why are we beating ourselves up when we feel that way? Because how is showing your art anything other than standing naked in front of the world?
So when someone comes or to you
Mhm,
or the parent or the child or whatever, and from your experience of being an educational psychologist and
mhm.
a somatic psychologist, right? That's
Yep.
your thing. And plus you've got so much experience in it. This book is so much about it. And they say, I have an anxiety disorder,
Mhm,
or I am clinically depressed, or,
mhm.
some of those things. How do you deal with labels?
So the labels are less important to me than what the student is feeling and what the parent is reporting, the impact of that might be. So I'll often start any conversation with a series of questions, like I'm a pretty typical psych in that
Right,
way,
right.
right? Because I want to hear from, like, what does that mean? And I'll usually say things. I work middle school, so my kids tend to have lots of vocabulary at their disposal. So we'll actually go through the head initially first, because that often feels safer to them and it's
Mhm.
more familiar. So I'll say things like, how does that show up for you? Like, do you find it hard to breathe? Do you feel like the walls are closing in? Like, what does it feel like to you when something like this happens? If I'm talking with the parent, I might say, how does it impact them? Are they willing to go to school, or is it a fight in the mornings? Are they willing to go to the grocery store? What about to a friend's house? Like, so I can get at the nature of kind of where this is living for them. And then depending on some of those answers, the other thing I'm finding out in those answers is, do they know how to label emotions? Do they know how to recognize where it is in the body? Do they have some favorite strategies that have worked in the past? Like, I'm finding out a lot about them through those kinds of questions. And then through that process, I'm going to come up with a way that I'm going to work with them, or a way that I'm going to help them. So, for example, I had a student who's neurodiverse. That just means that their brain's a little different. This particular student also had a diagnosis of autism that's part of the neurodiversity, and he was gifted. and he was super, super anxious. And he
Right.
responded very passionately and loudly to the environment. And so he came on into my office. He was having a hard time managing his emotions. He was having a hard time being in class. And when I asked him to describe what was hard about being in class, he described a lot of environmental factors that had to do with his five senses. So I knew a lot of this was that. And then when we'd talk, he would say to me at one point, "You're really loud." Now, I was not loud, but I understood what he meant. What he meant was he was feeling my energy really strongly. He just doesn't have language for that, so he didn't know that's what he meant. So I modulated my energy quite a bit for him, and I said, "Is that better?" Now, the truth of the matter is my tone didn't change at all, and the volume didn't change at all, but my energy changed. I shifted my energy quite a bit. And he said, "Yeah, that's a lot better." So that was my little litmus test to see if this was more an energy thing or a volume thing. And then once I figured that out, I provided some psychoeducation to him so he knew that about himself. This is really important. It's a step we tend to leave out a lot with kids. We don't explain their brain to them or explain their nervous system to them or provide that psychoeducation so that they can begin the process of recognition and awareness, which will eventually lead to being able to self-resource, which is actually how we begin to rewire the nervous system. You have to start with all of that. So I provide some psychoeducation, and then we talk about little wins we can do, right? So he's pretty convinced he can't do anything. There's no way he'll get any work done at school. And he's also, honest with me about, yeah, but when I get home, I don't do any work either. And I'm like, and then we just get behind. And then what happens? How do we feel the next day? And he's all, then it all feels worse. I go, yeah, this sounds like a bad plan to me, buddy. And he's like, yeah, when I hear you say it, it's not a good plan. I said, no, what? Maybe we do a different plan. He's like, I think we should do a different plan. I'm like, that's a good idea. And so we'll usually target one easy thing he can do. So if it's work related, what is the one thing on the list of to-dos that's like the easy no-brainer? I can do this.
Right.
I don't need a lot of help. Let's just do the one thing. Can we do the one thing right now? And he's all, yeah, I could do that. I'm like, great. Sure enough, he's brilliant. So it takes him like 30 seconds to do the one thing. And I said, how do you feel now? He goes, I feel a lot better. I go, great. We're just going to call that a win. It's a win for the day. I really don't care if you do anything else today. He's all, really? I said, yeah, you did exactly what I just asked. You did the one thing. I go, so now how are we going to fill our next, 3 hours? You got 3 hours left of school. How are we going to fill 3 hours? You already did the thing. And he's like, I don't know. I said, well, do you think you can make it to any class? And this sounds really simplistic, but really what's happening, the dynamic of this is we're doing some psychoeducation through the whole process. Anytime he's dysregulated, I'm getting him back into his body, deeper and deeper into his body. I'm helping him rewrite the script. And with this particular student, because he is so smart and he's aware, he's had a lot of therapy, so he's aware of his stress cycle. I tell him the little part of his stress cycle that most people leave out when they're explaining stress cycle, and that's the final stage, which is the scripting stage. This is when your brain scripts the response based on how successfully you dodged the bullet, right? Because the whole point of what the brain's trying to do is keep you safe. So if you survived whatever it was, it says that is a success. I will script it. Even if it was the most maladaptive thing on the planet, your brain does not care. It does not make that judgment. It just says, look, you're still breathing. It worked. We'll do that again. And then if you do this over and over and over, you start strengthening that neural pathway. And now that's like your main way of responding. And that's what was this kid's problem. It was his main thing was to escape or to flee or to not do or whatever. And so I just had to tell him, I said, dude, you just taught your brain to do that again. Do you like doing this? Is this fun? He's like, no, I don't like this. I said, then we need to teach your brain a new script. And the only way we teach your brain a new script is by doing something different. So what's the different thing that we're going to do so that your brain has to learn something new? And this is just how we do it. And we take it 1 second at a time, and there's setbacks, but this is what we do. And then with the mom, with parent, I will usually recommend some things to do home. This is what you do day in, day out. This is what you do if they're escalating, right? If they're having a really hard time with their emotions, these are some things we practiced at school, and it's usually something somatic. Maybe we're going to do some butterfly taps. Maybe we're going to shake our hands. Maybe we're going to do some really focused breathing. Like there's different things that we can do.
Everything that you just said, we can apply to ourselves as well,
100%.
whether we're in our 60s or 50s or 40s, or
100%.
same deal.
Yep.
Because if we can get that one small thing done,
Yep.
whether it's just, I'm not going to stay in bed all day, I am
Right.
actually going to get out of bed or make my bed, right? Get out of bed
Maybe,
and
yeah,
make,
maybe I'm going to, and maybe that's too much. So maybe what I'm going to do is just get out of bed and sit in a chair and read
right.
one page of something. And
Then your
then once I've
brain,
done that, I can go back in bed if I want to. But ask yourself first, do I want to? Maybe,
have that conversation with
maybe your
yourself.
opinion changed. Maybe you like it on the chair now. Give yourself an opportunity for that to be true. And we only give ourselves an opportunity for that to be true if we ask the question again.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us well, we did the root
Yep.
where, things are stored within our body, within our DNA from past experiences, generational trauma, and, and just being a highly sensitive person, we just collect,
On a very
right?
complex world. Yes.
Right. And then we talked about the burn part of it, which is the fear and how
Fear.
we stay stuck in fear through procrastination, through perfectionism,
Yep.
running away from whatever it is, and all those little techniques. But the last part is breathe.
Mhm.
So, how does that finish the movement?
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
movement.
the movement, exactly. So breathe is when we get to come home to ourself. And by self, I mean like the authentic piece of what it means to be fully human, which is fully recognizing that we are never static, ever, that homeostasis is a bit of a myth, that we are ever
Mhm.
changing, our cells are ever changing, everything is ever changing, and really being okay with that and allowing ourselves the grace to ebb and flow through all aspects of who we are, whether that's during a creation cycle, because since the book is really around
Right.
creating, right? Or whether that's anything else that we're engaged in. It's allowing ourselves to be whoever we're being. An example would be I'm going on a fabulous trip. I'm going to see a bunch of friends who are other somatic practitioners. It's a big conference. Like, I'm so excited, right? This is going to be a fantastic trip. And 30 seconds later, my entire nervous system collapses. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going on this trip. And then, I'm going to cycle with I don't, do I belong with these people? I don't know if I belong with these people, and then but what am I going to wear? Like, and then all the whatevers, right, are going to show up. And so the breathe section of the book is being able to hold space for yourself, self-resourcing, as you're cycling through this and staying ever curious as to what the heck is happening. And then recognizing those moments if you do need someone to resource with. So you're having a hard time, you're going to have to hold space maybe for someone because you're at work, or you're going to go home to your home, or whatever. You're going to have to be in a different state of mind. So do you need someone else to hold space for you for a moment so that you can ground? And being conscious enough and kind of connected enough that you can ride through these difficulties without dissociating so much that you don't recognize what you need and when you need it. And that's really what Breathe is about. For a different book, I had written this acronym. It was actually for a magazine article. I wrote a book called Girl's Guide to Breaking Free of Stress and Anxiety. And it's for like high school age girls in particular. And I was asked by a magazine, a popular young adult magazine, to write an article about kind of like what happens if you have an anxiety attack? What's a quick thing that people could do, right? And so I love acronyms because, especially when I'm working with kids, because they're easy to remember. So I'm like, acronym, I don't know. And I sat with this for a moment, and lo and behold, my oldest child, who is prone to anxiety attacks, had one and called me. So I had this out of body experience of trying to watch exactly what I was doing as a coach, as I'm coaching her, and being very present with her and coaching her in the moment. And from that was this technique that I called ROAR. And ROAR is a 4-step strategy. It works with 4-year-olds and it works with 84-year-olds. It's freaking brilliant.
Thank
And
you.
it's the first R of ROAR is relax. So we have to breathe and relax and get grounded. The second letter is O, and it stands for orient. So you want to orient yourself to the present moment, because anxiety exists as a product of the past or projection of the future, but it does not exist in the present. It just doesn't. And so if you can orient yourself to this moment right now, a lot of the feelings part of the anxiety, the pressure part of it's going to start to release. The A stands for attune. And what I mean by that is turn inward and ask yourselves what you need. What do I need right now? So it's very much like the notice when you want to run away and ask yourself what's going on. It's very much the same skill. And then once you've done those things, the last one is the hardest one, really, which is release. And that is releasing your attachment to the anxiety. You're not going to release the anxiety. The anxiety is going to do whatever the anxiety is going to do, but you can release your attachment to it. You can stop defining yourself by it and
And
just let yourself be. And that's what breathe is all about. The fact that I feel this way, and it's not the only thing I feel.
right.
And it will pass, because I know that we are cyclical as human beings and we don't stay in any state for very long.
Wow. You know, I think to myself, whether you're 4 years old or 84 years old, if you've got an acronym like ROAR,
Slit, right?
right? Or to have a
Just
little
the
piece of
roar.
paper in your
Yeah.
pocket,
Yep.
right? Like, or, even if you're a student at school, just have like,
A little card says
right, just
roar.
to have a little lion, just a little
Exactly.
lion with
Just even
our,
on an icon.
right?
Absolutely.
You're roaring or something, like,
Exactly. I
yeah.
trained a bunch of educators with roar and I made them all roar. That's what we did. That's how we started it. But see, human beings can't really imitate a roar correctly. Like we just don't have our vocal cords aren't set up right. And so we did a barbaric yop, right?
Yup.
Good old, good old Robin Williams. We just did a good old barbaric yop. And I just made him do it until I was convinced. I go, you got to convince me.
Aw,
It was great.
awesome. Yeah. So one more thing I want to touch on here.
Sure.
Okay, so if I have to make a decision,
Mhm.
it has to be a yes or a no, right? It has to be a yes or a no decision. You've got something really brilliant that you talk about in your book, a way to make a decision. And I know some people have the arm thing and they go, yes. If it's a yes, it's really strong. If it's a no, it goes right down. But if we could have a double checker.
When our bodies contract, it's usually because we're bracing. And if we are bracing, then it's probably a no-go. Your nervous system is trying to tell you something. And when your nervous system stays open and relaxed, which is the breath part, the inhalation part, that's almost always an indication that it's right. It's really funny that you ask. So I had a situation where I had to write a difficult email, and I think maybe 5 years ago, I would have looked at that. I would have not written that email because I would have uh, thought that I was coming across like rude or inappropriate or whatever. And I always have a rule that you can't come from a place of anger. It's not going to get you anywhere. And so you have to kind of calm that anger down before you respond on something. And the email was tough. It was tough. It was strongly worded. But I did the nervous system check. I'm like, okay, like, am I angry? Is this coming from anger? And I'm just like, and that's why I'm writing it? Or is this actually, no, there's some things that need to be said. They need to be said somewhat forcefully. But can I do so from a place that's really grounded and really rooted? And that's where I landed. And the reason I landed there is because my nervous system was really calm.
Like, how about if you're feeling overwhelmed or if you're
Hmm.
feeling like a
And
failure, if you're
yeah.
feeling all those things, like
Mhm.
I just can't do it, I can't. Aren't you just normally gonna constrict anyway?
Yes, yes, and that's a sign to pause and resource that before you do anything. And then check in with your body on anything that you do. Is my body calm and relaxed? Then it's probably fine. If my body, because your body is going to recognize threat, something not right, something doesn't vibe right, your body's going to recognize it before your brain. We are so used to
Yeah.
listening to our brain, but our brain will rationalize what our body is telling us. And what I'm arguing is that you really should listen to the body first. Now, that's
Yeah.
not to say you'll never get a misstep, especially early on, right? If you are, what do I want to say? If you're dissociated from your body in that you
Right.
are not well grounded and your body is hyper vigilant because of past traumas,
Right.
your brain is going to constantly give you messages of threat and you will interpret those as coming from your body. And my argument is, are they really, or are they coming from the threat center in your brain? And this sounds super subtle and nuanced because it is super subtle and nuanced. And so in those situations, especially when you're first starting out and you're not sure what the language of your body and you're not sure of any of this, just be super curious with it. Sit with yourself. You will learn to hear the voice within, the voice that's coming from your body. You will learn to hear it. You will learn to recognize it. You will learn to recognize the tingling in your body that tells you something's really exciting. You will learn to label it correctly. You might have once labeled that as fear or a threat when really it's excitement. You will learn how to tell the difference, but only if you're curious and only if you're willing to sit with it for a while. And somatic writing, a lot of the exercises that are in the book are somatic writing exercises. I actually wrote a whole book of somatic writing exercises, and I have a newer, updated version of that book coming out at the end of this month. And then I have a whole nother book of 365 different kinds of practices, one for every day of the year,
Oh,
coming
very
out in
cool.
January. Yeah, I call it the practice of being human.
Oh. And what's the one that's coming out this month?
Right Through is the name of it. Right Through Feeling Through the Page, which is on Amazon right now in as a paperback, but it's getting revised, getting tuned up a little bit, and then it'll be available in both ebook format and in paperback again as well.
Awesome. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I'm
I
super
mean,
excited too. It's a good companion piece.
right? How awesome is that? But unfortunately, it looks like we're almost finished. I
I
need to
know we could
know.
talk forever, I feel like.
We've got so much in common. Like
I
I could
love it.
talk to you forever. What's your last message of hope for our viewers?
That if our job on the planet is to show up as human as we possibly can. And that if we do that, it's all going to be okay, actually, because
Yeah.
human recognizes human, and human beings are hardwired towards optimism.
Mhm.
Life gets in the way sometimes, and we forget that, but we're actually hardwired for optimism. We're hardwired for community. We're hardwired to love. That's actually how we're made. So if we can just show up as authentically human as we can and get back to being how we were beautifully divinely made, I think we'd all fare a lot better and we'd all be a lot happier.
I think so
Yeah.
too. Just recognize our strengths, recognize our challenges, and just love us anyway. Love
Yep.
ourselves, right?
Yep.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you.
You betcha.
How can we get a hold of you?
I have a website, christinefonseca.com. I'm on Instagram a lot. That's my main social media place, but I am also on Facebook, and you can find me on Facebook as well. And if you just Google Christine Fonseca, you'll be sick of me. You'll find me everywhere.
So we can find all your books, the titles of your books.
On my website or on Amazon. They're all there as well too.
And
I have a shop on my website where you can get signed copies. It's really one of the only places you can
yes,
get signed copies of my books.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Uh,
you. I've enjoyed this very much.
Me too. Me too. And for those of our viewers that are recent, please subscribe. It helps me to get the word of hope out. It will help Christine and all the knowledge that she has. I mean, you've got to read this book. I mean, if like we were talking before the show, I am going to have a book club with my closest friends right here in person,
Love
and
it.
you're going to show up for me right on a Zoom.
100%. Whenever you
Yeah.
need me to. I
Ah,
love book clubs. They're my favorite.
me too.
My own book club that I'm part of, and then book
Oh,
clubs that I do for others. I love it.
yeah. So thank you. And thank you all for being here. Bye-bye. This podcast and inspired healing hypnotherapy do not provide professional medical advice. The information on this podcast is not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material, and are for informational purposes only. No material in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a healthcare regimen, and never disregard professional medical advice or seeking it because of something you heard on this site.